All right. So today I have with me Teemu Uotila. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He is
Close enough.
nice. um, he's in Finland and he is the COO of Quanscient, which honestly I am quite interested in really digging into because it's like in both the quantum and physics and like AI space. And I think a lot of people hear those words, but don't necessarily know like what they mean and like what it can actually do. So thank you for joining. I'm super excited to have a chat.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for organizing this. And yeah, the whole quantum AI and deep tech, those are all the buzzwords that you need to when you want to raise money. So it's
Exactly. Why don't we actually just start there and try to dive into like what do you guys do at Quanscient?
yeah. So the basic idea what we do is that you are an organization who want to design, let's say, microspeakers, radars, lasers, different kind of sensors. So engineers always need to do the design on those, meaning that you need to figure out what is the best and most efficient model to run your new design so that it, let's say microphone, that it captures the sound best and then fits the smallest amount of possible space. And you need always simulation tools for that. So you can see how it behaves and what's the real world effects in there. So that's basically what we do. And there's two separate tracks with us. We have the classical physics side, which is more on the part that I'd now described. And then there's the quantum angle, which is focuses more on the computational fluid dynamics, also known as CFD. So if you want to design an airplane, you need to do it with bits and pieces. You cannot simulate a full airplane model, not in a wind tunnel and not currently on a high performance computer either. And that is extremely expensive. But if you then take a quantum computer that has enough computational capacity and enough logical qubits, you have exponentially bigger computational power, meaning that then you can run these full airplane models. And let's say traditionally, if you develop a commercial airplane, it costs around 50 to 100 million just to, build the parts in a wind tunnel, in testing and all that. But with quantum computing, you can halve that cost or even bring it down to 1/3. You still need to do the whole wind tunnel testing and certification. That's not going to go away.
Yeah.
But basically, the quantum computing enables people to do stuff that they cannot do as of now. And well, now everyone's waiting to hardware to get there. It's not yet, but it's moving.
Cool. A lot of things to dig into there. I mean, like on the quantum side, is that like how big of if the computational part is not really, or the hardware part is not really there yet, how do you use that in your business now?
Yeah. So, well, the hardware part is not there in a sense that it's not faster than the classical supercomputers as of yet. It's gaining on there. So, and you have these big players, IonQ, IBM, IQM, who are the hardware manufacturers. And they are, sort of like racing to get a good amount of qubits in their hardware. But what we can now do is we can take the simulation cases and run those and compare them against the classical simulation scenarios. And then you can see if the results are matching. So after you see that the results are matching, then it only, in air quotes, only requires that the hardware gets there. And no hard estimate on when that would be possible, but somewhere between 2028 and 2030 would be that,
good estimate.
It's ready available. It doesn't mean that it will happen in a snap of a finger that, people will switch there, but that's at least when the hardware should be there.
And like these quantum computers are they like crazy big, like almost or is it like a MacBook? Like what?
No, yeah, they're definitely crazy big
Yeah,
chandelier type of constructions. So very, very interesting looking
yeah.
hardware.
But I
And
think
you
that's
don't,
what I've seen
yeah,
online as well. Yeah,
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 yeah, and well, basically is that you don't necessarily need that one in your sort of like a MacBook type of setting, because you can access the hardware with cloud infrastructure. So if you run it, if Amazon, for instance, set up X amount of hardware in their facilities, people can then tap into that. And of course, if you're a big enough operator, then of course you might want to have your own quantum computer.
yeah,
If you're like, let's say like a aerospace operator, automotive operator, then yeah, it would definitely help to have have a such thing in your own infrastructure. And well, the cost, of course, can range, but it's definitely several millions of tens and millions per piece. So it's not cheap.
yeah. So you guys are essentially the facilitators of like the software, right?
Yeah.
That they can use for this types of testing and
Yeah. And on the quantum side, of course, it's that you need both. If you develop a hardware and you don't have any software or application layer on top of that, then people don't adapt and use it. So it's sort of like these go hand in hand as of now, because the software needs to prove the hardware works and the hardware needs to prove that the software works. So it's a circle.
oh yeah. Yeah, you even need it in the like proving it works part. You can't really prove it without. Interesting. And you guys founded it, or you weren't part of the founding team, but you joined pretty early, right?
Yeah, the founding members, 4 of them, they started the company in 2021, and I joined 2 years later. So yeah, it's yeah.
How's the journey been so far with starting that? What's the big end goal? What's the big vision for Quanscient?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when the original 4 founders started, well, it was 4 employees, and then I think first financing round it was maybe like 10, and when I joined, it was around 20, and now we are a bit over 40. So doubling the size of every 2 years, I'd say. And well, what's the end goal? That's hard to say. We of course want, at least on the simulation world, to make an effect and change it so that we can be the big fish in the pond, so to speak. Currently, you have your Ansys consoles, etc., who are bigger than us. Ansys way bigger. Of course, they do a lot of other stuff also. But what we want to do is this: change how people create stuff and do these designs. It's an early stage that we are as of now, and it's definitely going to be a grind to get there. But so far, at least, everyone is joining the ride.
What's the stuff that's like, you feel like you're like is holding you back the most right now? What's the biggest challenges right now?
Well, definitely when looking at our business, it's that we are a startup, which means that when talking to enterprise customers, they are always like, well, are you going to be in business within few years, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a proving that we are stable and have a bright future ahead of us. That's of course one. And then, well, of course, the other tools or simulation providers, when looking at them, they have a long history with these companies, so they are very deeply integrated within the organization. So engineers are not going to throw them away just like that. So we need to sort of like prove our worth that we are part of that chain of development. And that's, of course, long discussion, especially with the enterprise customers. With startups and scale-ups, it's way easier. We don't sort of like need to prove that, because they don't have any legacy in there, and they are always willing to move faster and try out stuff.
It's like you don't necessarily have to come in and like compete against the current solution necessarily, but you actually just give them a solution that they didn't have before.
Yeah. So no burden of history.
Yeah. How do you approach that?
With enterprise customers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally what we want to have is that there's some case that is either unsolvable with the current tool set or extremely hard, time consuming. And then we, take that use case, show it how fast it can be done, and then prove our worth in that way. That's definitely the best way. It doesn't mean that we replace necessarily any of the tools or all the tools, but we, sort of like come in with the angle that this is what we can do and we can do best. And then of course we want to train the organization's engineers to use the tool and adapt it, because then they can see that, well, yeah, this works extremely well. So it's a training process also for us.
So it's also, because it's also a new tool that they have to actually adapt. So like, do you go in through like what you call like a champion, or through like an engineer like level, or do you like try to go top down and figure out who's actually the end decision maker on this and then try to go that route?
Yeah, it's definitely having sort of like an internal champion is the best and easiest route within the organization. When approaching from top down, that you have the decision maker there who has the money and is willing to explore, well, that's one way. But then when he or she, sort of gives the task to one of team members, then it also comes down to if the team member is receptive of new tools, or if they are very comfortable using something that they're currently using. So we always need to spot the champions within the organization and expand through there. That's definitely good. And well, with quantum side, it's a bit different, because all these big organizations, they have their own R&D offices, and they are highly interested on what the quantum capabilities are. So that's an area where we have good amount of traction, and big organizations coming and asking that, hey, what you can do with that. But of course, then there's the other problem is that as it's very early stages, there's no sort of like no clear vision on what the organization would be doing with the quantum computing or with the test cases yet. Yeah. So it's sort of like this proof of concepts that they throw. Are they valid for sort of like day-to-day use? Not necessarily for them. So they sort of like test this out. So it's a long process also there, but there are people who are highly interested and are internal champions. So it's sort of easy way to have a discussion.
Okay, interesting. So actually finding these champions is like the most efficient way that you've found.
Yeah.
How do you find them? How do you get in touch with those? Like, do they right now mostly like come to you, or?
There are two main sort of like avenues. Is that we organize, of course, a lot of webinars and do joint stuff with IEEE, which is this engineering consortium, or who does research and publishes stuff. So we get interest from there, and of course then participating in these different kind of events, conferences, etc. When we, for instance, show simulation model on superconducting magnets, and you have this one picture on a screen. If you're a layman, you just walk by and said, yeah, that's a nice blue, red, yellow picture. But if you are a person who works in that field, you can immediately see that is impressive. So then that's one way to sort of like attract people and have the first discussion with them, and then they get back when they're home, and we will start from there.
Okay, so events sounds like a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's good to be present. We tend to travel around the globe because it's like Coca-Cola. They spend several billions of euros or dollars in marketing, and everyone knows them. But so why do they do that? It's because you need to be on top of mind every every second with these people. So same with us. We need to just participate and be present and show everywhere. So then people are, well, yeah, maybe they are a true contender in this simulation world.
Do you do have you had like speaking gigs at these events as well?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it's mostly on the quantum side of things, because then, we publish some nice new papers or new results and people are highly interested in those. So on the quantum side, we definitely have a good track record of this speaking engagement. And then, well, sometimes we organize events of our own, live events also, where we, like showcase something, but those are far and few between.
Yeah, I've just heard I feel like most people I speak to, like the ones that really get something out of those events are like when they do the speaking.
Yeah.
That's the next level, because then people really, like if you're good at it, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's when attending conferences, I think that, well, be in what industry ever, when you attend these conferences, if you have a booth in there, it's always these sort of like a tire kickers that come around and then just like ask some questions, but are not interested at all, or they just want to, have a chat. So that can be also training. And said that if you are able to secure a speaking slot in some of the conferences, then it has a way more impact than people who are actually interested to drive towards your booth or whatever place you have.
Do you do anything today like sales motion driven, other than the events where you try and like reach them, like more outbound driven?
No, not yet, but that's of course what we have in plans for this year. So it's always important to, keep the leads coming and expand the funnel. So, it never should, shrink. And that's something that we are now looking into on how to do that in the, most effective way, and having sort of like a multi-channel approach also on that. We just don't rely on LinkedIn or webinars or anything, but, fire on all cylinders, so to speak.
Yeah. How many potential customers would you even have? Like, because I don't know how many. I guess there are a lot of engineering in like both engineering firms, but also just like engineering departments at. I guess they don't necessarily even have to be that big companies. That they're also creating new technology or creating new designs and would use like what's the different ICPs and like is it a super small?
Yeah. Well, with us, since it's based on sort of like this, you pay per usage or sort of like computational power. So you can be a small company also and buy our software, but then of course you don't necessarily have all the computational power available. And then you have the enterprise customers who might want to, run big simulations all the time. So it's a quite big range in there. And on the ICP profile, I'd say that if you're a company that has established yourself as a stable player in some of the field, let's say, for instance, you're an automotive supplier and you're building speakers, microphones, etc. You always need to, design those per car. So then that would be one of the customers for us. Or if you're a chip manufacturer, well, those are usually the big players, of course. But when you design a microchip, the smaller you can get it, the better, of course. But then, you need to take into account, for instance, how the heat affects in that design, and what is the maximum or the minimum size that you can have your chip. So a lot of different areas where we can operate, and that's sort of like one of the pain problems for us, because there's so many organizations that can use it, but where to focus and where to keep the focus. That's relevant.
Yeah. It's actually even something we also have, because at the end of the day we run an outbound agency, and we could essentially work with any B2B business out there. But like it's hard to go after every B2B business out there and actually be relevant to them and actually like do it at enough iteration to really like learn and really like understand that specific ICP or that specific segment. It's like, so far I feel like it takes like any time you go into a new subsegment, like for example we do a lot in like the financial, like private equity and M&A space, and every time like when we started that, it took like 6 months before we'd actually figured out how do they actually work and how do they actually speak, and what do they actually resonate, like what actually resonates with them, and what do they actually reply to, and not only reply to, but actually when we have them on a call that they actually turn into a good client as well. And then you have the first few clients, and then it's also the which of these clients are actually good, and actually taking that back to who are we targeting. And it like, I feel like anytime we've done that and tried to go after like a new segment, it takes like 6 months before you've actually really understood that target audience, unless you've already worked in it for 30 years already and like know intrinsically exactly what they do and how they work. But if it's like this, where it's like it can be used in so many different ways and approaches, it is quite hard. But what we almost always look at is like, you sort of stumble into some use cases, and then we try to just look at, okay, where are all the business use cases, where is it actually best, where are we actually earning money, but also where we actually producing the best results with the least amount of input from our side. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what any business is about, actually driving more results or value than what you're charging. And the more value you're actually delivering, the more you can also charge. What do you feel like are the fields or specific use cases where you're driving the most value right now, or see that you can drive the most value?
Yeah, definitely touching on what you said, that if you want to build sort of like a new vertical, that takes a long time. And we can say that we would be good at that, but yes, we are good at that, but the customer doesn't know that. And, then we need to understand their value chain, their processes, same as you, so that, you can actually map out on how your product or service sits in their field. And that definitely takes time, and then you need to expand the understanding on there. And if we look on how we sort of like approach when we want to enter a new vertical, is that we of course want to have some sort of market study done, that if the area, if it's big enough, if there's possibility for us to make millions or tens of millions, because we cannot hold the whole market. That's not going to happen to anyone. So we need to understand the market size, and then make sure that these organizations actually get the value from the tool. And I've always been a firm believer that it doesn't. To me, at least, it doesn't matter how much something costs if I can get X amount of value out of that. So if it costs million and it brings 3, yes, then it was million words spent. So to speak. But the hardest part, of course, is that, and I'd imagine same as with you, is that the buyer doesn't know when they are buying, how much value they're going to produce. You can only prove it afterwards, and that's sort of like the uphill battle that you always need to have.
Yeah, it's like the only way that you can really do it is have as relevant like case studies or as relevant results that you've produced for similar companies or similar teams, and use that as the proof. But at the end of the day, like, you don't really know before you've done it.
and then you need to iterate it and make it better. So the next time it's even more value. So that's sort of like what happens on the classical physics and simulation side.
Yeah.
Then if we take the quantum side, then that's a bit different because there's a quite big sort of like a fear of missing out with the organization because they don't know when it's coming, and what are the capabilities, but they need to understand it well before so that they are ready when it happens. And that's a sort of like it's two different dynamics in these, on the quantum side and on the classical simulation side. And it's sometimes very schizophrenic that these two areas that are within the same company.
Yeah. How have you divided that in the company? Is it two separate departments, or is it that everyone just knows both?
No, it's definitely separate departments or parts of organizations. So if you look at how we split our organization, it's quite typical product organization. So we have maybe 20% working on the administrative sales and then the business side, and then 30% roughly working on the cloud infrastructure side, and then we rest split between the quantum team and then the application engineering team, which the quantum team actually works on the algorithms on the quantum side and do projects there, and then the application engineers are the ones who work on the classical physics and simulation side with our customers. So no way you have capabilities that people would understand the full spectrum of physics and possibilities. And definitely on the quantum side is that, I think it was it Feynman who said that after this course you have gained understanding that you don't know nothing about quantum physics, and neither do I. So it's changing, and people are figuring out as we go, so to speak.
Very interesting. It's quite a different business model and entire mindsets behind the business when you're trying to prove something that hasn't really been done before.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of like a blue ocean scenario for many organizations. And now I think majority of the customers are waiting when are we going to have the hardware so that we can run our use cases and see how it actually works in real life.
Yeah, interesting. And there you say it's probably a few years still.
Yeah, I'd say it's at least a couple of years, and even when we get that threshold, it doesn't change the world overnight. I see it happens similar as it happened with AI. When ChatGPT first launched publicly, well, majority of people haven't heard about AI and possibilities, and it was quite rudimentary then. But then it slowly and with time it grows bigger, more better, and can do way more stuff nowadays than it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And that's what I think will also happen on the quantum side. So when it launches properly for public use, let's put it this way, then it will start gaining momentum year by year, and at some point it will replace the classical computers in some sense. But we'll have to see how my prediction goes.
Well, what actually made you, do both within the same company?
Yeah, that's originally, as our company's name says, it was planned that should it be purely quantum company. But then one of the founders who came into the mix had already this classical physics solver developed by himself. So that sort of added that flavor within the organization. And if you look at our customers' perspective, it doesn't, let's take 7 years from now, if our customer runs some simulation on our platform, it shouldn't matter whether it's classical physics or quantum physics. he or she should use the best classical or quantum, whichever suits the use case, and then you use it through our platform. Quantum is not good, for everything. And if you do, for instance, a small simulation task, you don't need a quantum computer for that. You can do it on the classical side, even with your own desktop computer in some cases. So at the end of the day, the customer shouldn't care what's the technology behind there, as long as they get the value and the results that they expect out of the platform.
Interesting. That makes sense. So is the primary difference between quantum physics and more classical is that the like computing that's needed behind it, or is it, I guess there's some difference as well, like between the two?
Yeah, definitely. Well, if we take the airplane's case, now you need to do it in very, very small pieces and then create the model and take it to wind tunnel. And then if the model is crap, you need to do the whole design cycle again. And that's very arduous, time consuming and expensive. So on the quantum potential side, that once you have a quantum computer which has, let's say, 80 plus logical qubits, then it's way, way faster than high performance or supercomputers around the world. So it's whenever you add qubits in the mix, the computational power grows exponentially. So, it's going to be a race after that. So if you develop a 100 qubit logical qubit quantum computer, and the next day someone develops 110 qubit logical computer, well, the 110 will be exponentially better than the 101. So it's to use a military term, it will become an arms race also at some point, that people, stack up with the hardware and develop it faster and faster, because you can do so much more just with adding by one qubit in there. So it becomes worth it.
How do you even know that it's actually gonna, be the quantum computers that they're actually gonna, work and be developed? Is that like, how do people know?
Yeah, that's the beauty. It's pretty much theory, and then you base designs and developments around that theory. And well, of course, there's simulation models and simulation tools that can simulate a quantum computer and quantum environment, so you can prove it in there. But it's never the same as running on a real hardware. So that's the point where we are at, that there is definitely good amount of proof points that it will get there, but there's no solid super simple quantum computer yet that can prove it instantly that yes, this is so much better.
Yeah.
There's evidence on that it's gonna get there and it will be there, but well, it depends on whoever develops it first and then showcase running software and algorithm on top of that hey, look at this, we did it. It's way faster.
Like, that must be crazy, like to build a business around that bet and like when it's gonna come out and everything else as well.
Yeah, that's luckily our business is also on the classical physics side, so that brings us good revenue in there. But definitely when I look all these quantum hardware players, they dish out big investment rounds and require several billions of euros or dollars per each round, and investors put money in there and they don't know who's going to be the winner in there, who are going to be the winner, and they just have to have sort of like a blind faith that at some point this happens. Things in quantum side happen slowly until you have the computer, then they start happening fast.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you have the computer, then you can start using it to develop the next one as well. And then it's like
exactly.
sort of like AI. I mean, ChatGPT and Claude or Anthropic, like they're all using their models now as well to actually continue developing the models. So it's like this
it's
flywheel
cycle.
that just like
And especially when you throw the AI in the mix on the quantum side, then I don't have any idea what happens then, because then you have AI that has exponentially bigger computational power. That's going to be a Skynet level stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Hopefully not on the Terminator
Yeah.
scenario, but something better.
Hopefully something better. Well, let's see. Teemu, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
If people wanted to go and follow you and what's going on and how everything is developing, or maybe even reach out, what would be the best place to do so?
Yeah, well, I usually avoid regular social media, so LinkedIn is the only place that I'm on there. And so yeah, that's the best way to subscribe our organizational news or follow us in there. And well, you can also send contact to me, so I can be found under LinkedIn, Teemu Uotila, or with the hyperlink Tuotila. So it's quite easy to find in there. So
Yeah.
I'm not hidden there. So hopefully someone will reach out and want to know more.
Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you.